Retreats are such interesting experiences because they all have a sort of life form of their own, kind of a life cycle and a particular quality or character I notice in various retreats. And most people also notice that. And the more you do retreat, the more you pick this up. Some retreats are profoundly emotional. Some retreats are laden with grief. Some retreats are very transcendent. Others are gritty. Some are painful. Sometimes there's a theme of illness running through. Regardless of that, they're always transformative and profound. This one is energetic, very obviously. A lot of energetics here, a lot of profound energy movement, Kundalini type stuff going on early on. The talks have sort of triggered that, I think, partially, and got Violet shooting people out of a non-reality cannon with her sound meditation last night. That was a trip. Um, so yeah, keep in mind the grounding talk I gave yesterday. There's a reason I gave that talk. This just has that feel. Things change all the time. Who knows what we'll be experiencing tomorrow? But right now, there's a lot of energetic shifting going on. It's powerful. I would say subjectively, there's quite a spectrum of how transformation appears for you, or feels for you, or presents for you in general. With enough time in this space, enough shifting, enough identity dissolving, you're going to know all these textures sooner or later to various degrees. But for some people, it's much more, say, energetic. Some people, it's much more heady, certainly at the beginning. Some people, it's a deeply emotional process. And there's mixtures. But often it can be surprising to people, sometimes early on when there's a lot of energetics to it. And if you don't know what that means, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. I wouldn't have early on necessarily either. But for some people, it's just like that. They sit and listen to a talk like this, or guided meditation, or sit in silence for a day, and all of a sudden their body's just charged, like literally moving on its own, literally like involuntary movements, twitching, a lot of energy. And you intuitively know what it is. You may not have a word for it. You may not have a like scientific or spiritual understanding for it, but you know what it is. You know what's happening at some really deep level. But it can still be very surprising because no one told you, oh, you're going to sit in silence for a half a day or a day, and all of a sudden your body's going to involuntarily twitch to the point where you can't get out of bed, and you won't know what's happening. And then you're going to also panic a little bit because it's just such a bizarre experience, and your mind's blown out because of the lectures you've been listening to or the pointing. It's quite a trip, right? You're like, is this what I signed up for? And it is, but any of us that sign up for these retreats, myself included, never know what's going to happen the next moment, the next day. It's really just such a beautiful endeavor of entering the mystery together, and that's what we're doing. We're entering the mystery together alone. We're entering the mystery together as a group, and there's also a profoundly personal component to this for each individual here, which is really beautiful. But you can't know how that's going to play out. So however it plays out is good. It's okay. It's admirable to even be here, to expose yourself to this. And that may be all you can really do. Maybe we give our mind these little games to play, like inquiry and questioning and practices, but really exposing ourselves to this kind of environment is an act of surrender, an act of submission to something truly beyond us, and even beyond our understanding, to where even faith can stop making sense because we don't even know what we have faith in. But there's something there, something transcendent, something vastly bigger than us, something sublime. And we know that, and we trust that. That trust is, in one sense, completely irrational, actually, right? If you think through what we're doing here, it's kind of insane. Right? I mean, it kind of is. And to many people, it is. And you know, you develop compassion for anyone who, you know, when you feel like you really just want to talk about your spiritual stuff to people who don't understand and you're going to help them understand it, and they just look at you like you're freaking nuts, and then you just think they're the weird one, and then later on you're like, well, okay, I can see how that might have been a little crazy to tell people like the way they're experiencing reality is not right, but I know what's the way they're experiencing it is right. So you learn to have a lot more I don't know, humbleness about about it, uh and realize that it's in a sense it really is a solitary journey. You can't force anyone to come on that ride with you. And there is a component of this from the conceptual, from the human paradigm and so forth that is just bizarre and it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? And yet, here we are. We trust something that is, it's just not of that world. It's not of the conceptual world, the world of paradigms, the world of how to be a better person, how to be the right person, even in spiritual contexts, even right action and all these things. you know, there's something here that goes completely beyond all that. It just really transcends it. It doesn't perceive right and wrong and um, good and bad and what I should be doing and what I shouldn't be doing as some kind of um, guidepost. It just doesn't perceive any of that. And that's a huge thing to let go of at first. Huge, right? We try so hard to be good people. And in the relative world, probably everyone in this room is a pretty good person, I would think. You really try to be kind to people, do the right thing, spend your time wisely, take care of your responsibilities, apologize when you yell at someone for no reason, um, whatever, spiritual practices to make yourself a better person for the collective. Like, we're good people, sure, in the relative sense. We also know there's something that goes just completely beyond it. And with that, we actually have to let go of our identity around being a good person. We have to let go, whether we like it or not, of our identity or identities around being a good person, being the right person, being a spiritual person. This really is the snake that eats its tail in a way. A friend I have who's a Zen teacher, she said, the reason I love Zen is because it's the only thing I've ever found that in the end it just wipes everything away. And it's very much like that. It can be surprising how much goes away. And it can be even more surprising that when all that goes away, things work a lot better. The universe works just fine without your help, without your ego, without your agendas, without your judgment value system. It doesn't need that. Nature doesn't need your value system. Isn't that a tragic recognition? The universe doesn't need you to recognize it, understand it, transcend it, control it. It doesn't. Um, it We recognize this very um, ineffable space where I like what David Hume said. To the universe, the life of an oyster is no less valuable than the life of a human. And there is a truth to that, and we have to realize that. Realize the transcendent truth, the non-dual truth, the truth that goes beyond any human paradigm. And paradoxically, that's when we can really learn to inhabit our humanity in the relative. Doesn't make sense, really. It doesn't. Even to me, it does not make sense, but it does work. So there's some kind of trust here. There's some really great Buddhist terms like prajna wisdom, which means transcendent wisdom. What is transcendent wisdom? What is transcendent um, trust? What is transcendent faith? It's trust, faith, and wisdom that you can't even cognize. That doesn't mean it's not important. Doesn't mean it's not there. It's not this. Yeah. There's a wonderful Zen teacher, Zen master Banki, he said it over and over at his lectures. Everything is perfectly managed in the unborn. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that. It doesn't get any clearer than that. It's a lot of koans there, or a lot of entry points in there in that statement. You know, what if I don't have to manage anything? Kind of what I was talking to someone here about yesterday. The question, what is it? What can I find in myself right now that doesn't want anything? That's such a radical exploration, because what are we if not a collection of wanting stuff, rooted in a collection of fears of what we don't want, avoidance, desire and aversion, desire and aversion. Like if that goes away, there's not much going on up here anymore, really. It gets very calm. So yeah, everything's perfectly managed in the unborn, so you don't have to manage anything. What if I didn't manage anything? What happens then? That was my guided meditation this morning. Yeah, feels nice not to have to manage anything, or to realize you never did have to manage anything, or to realize you never did manage anything ever. That never could, no matter how much you convince yourself you can. So it's a beautiful statement. Everything is perfectly managed in the unborn. Another call on there, another question, entry point is, what is the unborn? What is unborn right now, right here? What is unborn? I know what I think is born. I know what I think has come into being. I know what I think is real. That's fine. What is unborn? It's a beautiful, beautiful pointer. Introspective question. What is the unborn? Look and see it. Look and see it right now. Feel it right now. What is the unborn? It's managing all of this, but not in any way we can understand. Not in any way we understand management, because we understand management dualistically. There's a manager and there's a object of the management. That's the only way we can really think about management or agendas or control. But in the unborn, everything is perfectly managed. It's not like there's something called the unborn managing stuff. Everything is perfectly managed in the unborn. It's unborn, undying. It's like the term used in the Pali Canon for the Buddha is the Tathagata, the one thus come, the one thus gone. It's right here. That's the beauty of this. There's no one up here that knows something you don't. There's no enlightened state that comes in your future. All of that is a dream. All of it's just completely a dream. And it's not hard to see that, because all of the other seeking is a dream too. Imagining the future, imagining when you finally get validation, imagining when you're finally approved, get the approval you seek, when you finally get your partner to see what you want them to see about you or them, when you finally find the perfect lover, when you finally, whatever, anything, everything, get enough money, retire, you finally have children, your kids finally do what you think they need to do in life, finally go to school, get a degree, right? The seeking, seeking, seeking. This is just the game of the mind. It goes on and on and on and on. It's not different when it comes to spirituality. Initially, we still just project something into the future as if it's not right here. So there's this funny thing, this paradox of humbleness. I don't want people to be humble. I don't want people to elevate me. Obviously, I think anyone who knows me knows that, but that's part of it. It's part of the lie we tell ourselves. Oh, that's the enlightened person up there, takes me off the hot seat, or enlightenment's in the future, which takes me off the hot seat now. But I'm putting you on the hot seat because I'm telling you you're already on fire. If you're here, you're on fire. So burn up. Don't put it in the future. Don't put it on me. Don't put it on everyone else who's already awake or not, whatever. It doesn't matter. It's on you. The days of projecting enlightenment outward are over. They have to be. Projecting it onto the dead master from 1,000 years ago. There's good pointers there. It's great. There's good books. There's good, but it's not. It just can't be about that anymore. The world needs you to wake up. Your life needs you to wake up. So it's kind of, in a way, tragic for the seeking mind, because the seeking mind wants to wake up. Yeah, it does, but it doesn't want to do it now. It wants to do it later. It wants to be able to, right? So then it doesn't want to hear this. It really doesn't want to hear this. Part of you doesn't want to hear this, or part of the mind doesn't want to hear this because it wants to make it later. It wants to seek it because it feels so good to seek. Doesn't it feel good to just imagine what it's going to be like later when you're enlightened? Imagine what it's going to be like later when you meet that perfect lover. They're the same thing. It's the same thing, literally. So yeah, part of us doesn't want to hear this, and that's why, in one sense, I just say it over and over and over and over, and I remind of certain things over and over to just sort of counteract the momentum of the mind. The other thing I say over and over, over and over is, it's right here. It's just this. It really is. But the mind is clever, and it can take it's just this and turn that into a thought as well. It's just this. It's just this right here. I know that, and I can't wait to like realize that. Right? It's so clever, and it really does that. It really, really does that. Why do I know? Because people tell me that all the time. It's like, I know that. I know. It's right here. I already know that. But what can I do to like, wake up? It's crazy. And then part of the problem is the mind is in the business of, it's either this or that. It really is in the business of division. If it's this, it's definitely not that, right? But the truth of it is, when we talk about this, it really is this sort of paradoxical fusion of relative and absolute, meaning, yes, there's not an event in the future called awakening. Yes, awakening is waking up to the truth that there was never anyone seeking in time that's apart from anything. Yes, it's waking up to the truth that there was never anything or anyone apart from anything, such that there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere that you need to land. There's just what is, and it's really without boundary, without substance, without limitation. That's all true. At the same time, I do tell you or suggest to you to trust your instinct, and that's suffering, that says, yes, I know that actually. I know what you're saying. I trust and feel what you're saying, not because you said it, because I feel it here. At the same time, something in me is like, there's still a lot of struggle here, and that's okay. So we just acknowledge that. We don't have to turn it into something in the future, though. That's where the mind has trouble. It's like, well, but if there's struggle here, that must mean that something in the future is going to happen to make the struggle go away. It's just carrying attention into the mind. It's an avoidant movement. It's a dissociative movement. It's not a necessary connection that part of you does know, a big part of you, a vast part of you knows that this truth is already here, that what I'm saying is also your experience right now. That's true. And something in you also knows that there's a discord in your experience. There's something that doesn't feel quite in touch with that. That can also be true, but that does not equate to seeking. It doesn't have to. It doesn't have to turn into, okay, but how do I, how can I start imagining what it's going to be like in the future? All these other people, they got it. They've only been to one retreat, and she's having Kundalini over there, and I don't get that. I've been at 5 retreats. That's her first. Why is she having Kundalini? Whatever, right? All the stuff that our minds do, and some of that is just automatic. It's momentum. It's whatever, spontaneous thoughts. But some of it we're really believing. We're buying into it. We're grappling with our thoughts, believing, pushing, pulling. That's the part of the spell that we're just breaking here over and over and over until you just kind of really get tired of it. You see that it's a fool's game, as much. I mentioned earlier in a comical way, and it is comical if you look at it, and we've all been there many times, how comical it is to believe, that thought again that says, oh, I can't wait till that, right? I can't, when that happens, then I'll finally be happy. And, and there is a kind of satisfaction or pleasure in that, in a way, right? In the longing or fantasizing. But we have to put together that comes. I think we need to turn the mic down just a slight bit. So, um, so yeah, we have to put together the truth that fantasizing, the sort of, I don't know, desire aspect of believing those thoughts about the future and using them to pacify ourselves is what we're really doing. We don't know it when we're doing it, but we're using them to avoid emotional experiences, and that becomes more and more obvious over time, for sure. But we have to see at some point that that comes with a huge cost, and the cost is when when we feel like we're using thoughts, when we feel like we're identifying with thoughts that make us feel better, it's directly associated to those other experiences where we feel like we're being used by thoughts, we're being used by our mind, we're being kicked around by our own mind. It comes in the form of anxiety, um, uncomfortable self-reflection, self-judgment, um, overactive mind that won't shut up, all of that. All of that is the sort of other side of the coin of that seeking mind, and you can't have one without the other. You can't have the apparent, mind-based or thought-based or seeking-based ups without the downs. They just come together, and you get tired of it at some point, the push and pull, and it feels more and more like just not so real, not really what's happening. There's something more true happening. There's something more real happening here, and that's what I want to address. And everybody here knows that, or you wouldn't be here. But if there's still some stickiness to the tendency to want to grab thoughts and fantasize and daydream on purpose and all that, just ask yourself, has it ever really worked? Does it really deliver the goods? Or does it just sort of pull you away from what your experience is right now? And what are the side effects? If you get that whole picture together, if you really do an investigation and see what the mind does when we buy into it, when we push it, when we stimulate it unnecessarily through buying into concepts, beliefs, the future, the past, all of it, um, it will start to look like that's not really a great deal anymore. Like it's not a great deal. It's a great sales pitch, but the product or the service that's delivered is um, not what you thought it was. That's how it was for me. Because really, that's the only um, it's the only obstructive element in your experience. Really, is that seeking mind, that the enticement of thought, the enticement of dualistic thought, the enticement of subjectivity. It's enticing in a way. It's addictive, actually. Paul Hederman has a lovely thing he says about this. He's a really great non-duality speaker, if you want to check him out. But also, he was in the recovery, or he is in the recovery community. Many years recovered from drug use and stuff. But he says, I used to shoot cocaine into my neck because so it hit as fast as possible, and kicking that addiction was nothing like kicking the addiction of self. The addiction to self is far more intense, insidious, um, slippery addiction. I agree with that. All addictions are rooted in that addiction, that primary addiction, the addiction to the illusory self, the controlling self, the subjectivity, the tendency to subjectify, to pacify. None of it works. It just doesn't work. So a lot of this work, particularly when we do work around reactivity and equanimity, desire and ill will, desire and aversion, a lot of this is seeing how we pacify ourselves, and that it's not necessary. It's necessary for maybe a baby or a toddler or an infant or whatever to pacify itself. It's part of their functional development and so forth. But something about human consciousness, the reflective nature of human consciousness, drags so many repressed or avoided fears, or really fears that get um, I guess swept under the rug by identity structures as we grow older. So we do develop these identities that are the child identity, the adolescent identity, the young adult identity, the adult identity, the parent identity. We just develop layer after layer of identity, which functions well in this society we've developed and created. They do. They have function and they work in a lot of ways. But because of the reflective nature of human consciousness, and particularly because of the identity structure or the identity mechanism, we actually carry these very, very old, deeply rooted fears and avoidance patterns. We carry them into the adult life, and they just become this sort of pain body, this sort of um, I don't know, almost like an energetic mass that's sort of unrecognized, unaddressed, and um, and we use very outmoded or almost irrelevant ways of pacifying ourselves, and we use the mind to do it, which is very strange. Um, Probably very early on, maybe by the time we're a couple of years old, we actually learn to use subjectivity to back away from experience. It's a very primary processing thing, so it may not be obvious to everyone, but for me, over actually through a lot of realization and time and introspection on and just noticing how things happen, I started to sort of remember this like as a very, very young, functioning individual, like a very young functioning nervous system, could start to remember how it felt to like start to pull away from experience. You're not actually pulling away from anything, but the subjectivity, which is really maybe the primary movement of the separate self, is just the sense of being able to pull back from experience a little bit. um, that starts to become your pacifier instead of sucking on your thumb and your toes and you know having one of the parents, mom, often dad, whoever, hold you close and help you regulate your nervous system. That's the primary pacification. That's the primary regulation for a mammal. But when that's not there, you suck your thumb and learn different things. And if you don't have good physical contact growing up, you learn maybe really dysfunctional ways of pacifying, but you still do it. But regardless of how any of that plays out, we all learn to pacify through subjectification. We learn to pacify through standing back from experience, which is the primary avoidant movement in consciousness. And it's pretty innocent at first. It doesn't cause problems probably when you're very young. And children are often, vast majority of time, young children are in a sort of presence, not really subjectifying intensely, but they're actually taught as that nervous system develops. They're also taught, no, you have to keep doing that subjectification. Like you're actually taught to do that. No, you have to stay back there and become someone. Here's who you need to be so you can be approved by mom, dad, friends, teachers, society, right? And the more identities you're given, the more you learn to, you have to come back here to do that. You have to self reflect on how are you doing, how am I doing in comparison to other people, and you're taught to keep this subjectification going until it feels normal, and then it feels like you. It feels more like you than you ever felt like a you before, and then you feel like you need to defend the you, that you, but it's a small version. It's not really what you are. It's not really what's happening. And this is probably all innocent. It's neurologic. It's not like you can teach a child not to have this or something. It's going to happen, and it's okay. But it's it's what we end up using as an adult for pacification much of the time, especially if we didn't have good emotional models and didn't learn to pacify ourselves in physical ways, healthy physical ways, or with others around us and so forth. We tend to do more and more of that subjectification. We tend to be very in our minds, in our heads, and then there's all kinds of external devices and with devices, essentially screens that help us do that. If you think about all the media and all of this, it's just a way of kind of helping you subjectify even farther. This physical world's not distant enough when you're subjectifying, so we're going to create a screen and make another physical world even farther out there so we can feel farther back here. And we are in control of what we watch. We can change and we can scroll with our thumbs, so we feel like we're even in more control. It's all an illusion, though, right? That subjectification is a pacification maneuver that may feel good at first, and they may work at first for a moment, for another moment, but at some the debt you pay on that just builds and builds and builds. And this is really interesting to me, this part, that for some reason, some people, I don't know why it is, they just do not want to see this. It's like they want to insist that they can keep pacifying that way, and that's fine, you know. But it often really starts shooting them in the foot, and they start feeling really, really, really miserable, like disassociated, horrible, miserable. And anyone who tells them, whether it's a therapist or me or someone else, that's like, you know, you're disassociating. Like, you know, you have to actually engage in life. You have to start coming into contact with the world and doing things and getting as like the last thing they want to hear. Some people really, it's just a, I don't know what it is, a little bit of a stubbornness associated with that wanting to live in a dream, wanting to live in a fantasy. And that can be really tragic actually for someone who has a tendency to really disassociate. So I don't know if that's referring to anyone in here, but there are definitely people out there like that, and it's really sad because it's a hard thing to get through. It's like all of that illusion of control, all that illusion of subjectivity, all that illusion of the world you think you're managing through just keeping distance from it. Um, the illusion is what's so uncomfortable. The illusion is your suffering. It is the problem. You know, that is the issue. That's the problem. You have to collapse that somehow. Stop pulling back. And sometimes it's just actually engaging in life. It's literally down and dirty, developing yourself in life, challenging yourself, getting out into the grittiness, feeling the pain, feeling the emotion, you know, taking the risks and all that. So maybe it has to do with risk. I don't know. Maybe some people are so risk averse that this is too hard. This is crazy, and it is. But yeah, that is a very addictive process. That subjectification and pacification, and that is the world of mind identification. Um, and everybody is under that spell until they're not. Maybe not everybody, but everyone I've ever met. Some people are very close to breaking already. They're just growing up, but that doesn't look like bliss and presence. That looks like a lot of suffering usually. It did for me. It's a very intense experience to be, you know, molded into a sense of self when you know it's not real, but feeling all of the triggers around letting that go, feeling all of the fear around letting that go because there's still identity forming there and the body's responding to it as if it's an actual identity. Um, so yeah, how do we pacify ourselves and what is the cost? There's nothing wrong with grounding. There's nothing wrong with connection. There's nothing wrong with touch. There's nothing wrong with exploring the senses. It's just that subjective movement, subjectification that we use to pacify ourselves, and it's complex. It can become extremely complex. It's not just a simple pulling back and going no. Becomes extremely complex. The whole fantasies about how the world should be different so you can feel better, and it gets so confusing and you're believing it, then you're physically reacting to the world as if that's going to happen, beating yourself to death, you know, causing problems, undermining yourself. Like all that stuff happens because of the complexity of this subjectification. Just see that it's all pacification. That's all it is. It's just trying to make yourself feel a little better. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. So find what does work. Simple things work. Movement works. Touch, breathing works. Meditation works. But even meditation can get disassociative depending on how it's taught and how you use it and so forth. Um, and actually, when the rubber meets the road, I think when real transformation at both the spiritual and just human level is happening is when we realize that even that which we're trying to avoid through pacification, which is emotion, of various types of emotions often, even that can actually be pacifying. The contact with emotions themselves, you realize, oh, I've been avoiding that my whole life because I was around really unhealthy people who were also avoiding emotion, and they forced me to, they actively taught me to avoid emotion through trauma, through abuse, all of those things. Oh, but they were wrong, and I was wrong. I actually can come into contact with emotion, and at first it's going to be terrifying because I'm not used to it, but at some point it actually becomes like, oh, I can actually, there's actually a pacification in the feeling, in the sadness, in the tears, in the anger, in the rage, and the shaking, and in the hotness of emotion, in the coolness of emotion. There's actually a pacification there. But it's very natural. It's very simple, And the beauty of it, it's also at some point non-dualistic, meaning it will actually help you truly transcend the dualistic not like you can do up here. You can transcend the dualistic experience and consciousness to a degree, but not to the degree you do when you realize the non-dual nature of sensation, which I can make some sort of radical sounding statements about. It's like seeing through form, realizing there's actually no body. But that sounds sci-fi until it happens. So it's really just about exploration. That's why I said yesterday or the day before, it seems unlikely or not obvious that emotion and deep emotion work is tied to non-dual realization, but they're totally tied together. And if non-dual is not clear to you, but you have a great intellectual model for it, or every intellectual model for it, but it's not a clear experience, it's because of emotion. Just do some emotion work, and you'll have to face the fear to do that. You face the fear, because disassociation always comes with fear, breeds fear. The more you disassociate, and everyone disassociates, the more you disassociate, the more you pacify with subjectivity, the more emotion gets avoided, the more there is fear of that emotion. There's more fear of coming into contact with it. Not that there's any reason for the fear at all, because there isn't actually, but it's a sort of unknown. And if there's one thing that the thinking mind does not like, it's the unknown. Doesn't like it. Makes it feel really uncomfortable. How are we doing on time? Oh, 5? 10. Okay. Eshwar has a nice thing he says. When you come into contact with the unknown, he says things in very simple ways, but they're very potent and very true. When you come into contact with the unknown, you have two choices: keep going or turn back to the known. I don't know which one you're going to do at which moment, and I don't know what the makeup of a person that goes fully into the unknown, but I know what it's not, and it's not something like courage necessarily. Maybe it is, but people go into the unknown with a lot of fear, with terror sometimes. So yeah, I guess an element of courage is good, but if you're not a courageous person, it doesn't mean you can't enter the unknown. You can maybe through surrender is the most direct way. Surrender to the fear. Yeah. Um, it's not by intellect for sure. Obviously, I mean that's the biggest sort of absurdity is you can think your way. My Zen teacher used to say, I thought it was so funny. He'd be giving a Teisho talk to the whole group or whatever, and he'd say, "If you think you can, wake up to your true nature through intellect and reasoning," he's like, "Come into the Dokusan room and we'll mix it up." It's like nice challenge there, yeah. And I feel that way too. I don't just feel that way; it's very obvious to me. The difference is, I don't really challenge people on it too much. When someone's really in their head about this stuff, I'm actually kind of careful how direct I am with them, because I've just noticed that I can destabilize people like that, or pushing too hard there's a reason sometimes that we're really in our head about it. Like something is not ready here, and that's okay. There's timing to this. That's fine. But yeah, you're not going to reason your way into that. You don't enter the unknown through reasoning, of course. You don't enter the unknown through understanding the unknown. You don't enter the unknown through knowing everything about the Pali Canon and every stage of enlightenment and everything, all the Dzogchen terms. That does not enter you into the unknown, obviously, right? It's not bad to do that. It's just not going to enter you into the unknown. It's not going to cross you over. So intellect doesn't do it. Courage isn't really necessary, I would say. Oh, here's one. Bargaining. Negotiation will not do it. You can't manipulate the universe. You can't fake it. You can fake it with me or yourself or your family or your friends, but you can't fake this. That's the beauty of it. So so um so you have to enter authentically, however that is for you. And I can't tell you how to be authentic, and no one can tell you how to be authentic. That's the beauty of authenticity. You find it in yourself. You stop faking it. Stop BSing yourself. Stop BSing those around you. But it's even more than that. It's not a big project of constant truth telling with everyone you interact with. It's mostly about yourself. It's inward. So be honest with yourself. Um, what that looks like, maybe sometimes it can, is people will tell me, you know, yeah, this just really hasn't worked for me, and they won't do it up here so much because if you're here, it's you're engaged in this. But sometimes I'll get comments like on YouTube, and it's like, but don't you think some people just can't wake up? Like, there's probably people who have. There's a big argument about why some people probably can't wake up. It's like they've been to this many retreats and this and that, and they haven't, And what I really hear is, please go into complicity and tell me that I can't wake up so that I don't have to let go of what I don't want to let go of. That's what they're saying. And I don't say it that directly to them because it could sound mean, but is the truth mean? Or it's like, if you're talking to me, if you're talking on my YouTube channel, I assume you're some part of you wants to wake up. So I try to get them there one way or another. And it's amazing how much resistance there will be to that when I say, no, you can wake up. I don't want to hear that. It's like, what are you doing here? Like, truly, I really wonder sometimes, like, why are you taking the time to comment on this channel? Why didn't you just turn it off and run away and never come back if you don't want to wake up? Like, you're crazy. Don't You'd be crazy coming to something like this if you really didn't want to wake up. It's nuts. Why would you do that to yourself? So yeah, that's what I mean by inauthenticity. Like, get straight with. So I'm not trying to pick on someone or make fun of that. What I'm saying is, if you feel that discord in yourself, like, no, I know I want to wake up, but it's just not working, and that's your story, and that story is really solid. And then what I actually suggest is, look at what you really want in life. Just be honest with yourself. What do you want? You know, Sometimes you have to go back to the conventional seeking. I just really want to finally have a lover. If that's been such a deficit in your life, you've never emotionally connected with another person romantically at all. You may need to do that before you wake up. Really, you may need to find out how to do that. Go out and figure it out, because otherwise it may just be such a distraction for you, and you'll tell yourself you want to wake up, but you don't really. And then maybe if you sort that out, that part of your life out, all of a sudden you realize, oh, that didn't make me happy like I thought it would. Gave me some. It was something. It opened up a part of me that I didn't have access to because of whatever block I had. But it definitely didn't. It's not Shangri-La. It's not awakening. And I know that now. Now I can come back and really. So sometimes I tell people, like, just be honest with yourself about what you really want. What do you want? It's fine to be. We're often told we shouldn't want what we want. That's stupid. You should know what you want. If you want it, you already want it. So just be honest with yourself. Yeah. Um, Now, short of someone who I think maybe really doesn't want to wake up right now, they have some interest, but there's maybe some other part of their life they probably need to address first, which I really do think happens. Short of that, all of us have competing agendas. So I think it is helpful just to come into a kind of authenticity with yourself that, yeah, this is the most important thing for me. But at the same time, man, I really demand respect from people. I really need whatever, my spouse to acknowledge me, or those other competing agendas also distract us. They pull our energy in various directions. In this case, maybe you don't need to go completely fix something or anything, but just acknowledge it. Acknowledge that there are competing agendas, and when you see the competing agendas, instead of avoiding them because you've built a spiritual identity, then you can it just helps you reorient a little bit to truth. And then when you reorient to the truth, that may be somewhere between what you think awakening is and what you think this is about what you think you need and the relative, all of a sudden your attention just orients just enough, and then the awakening's right there. The awakening is here. The awakening is in your authenticity. You wake up in your authenticity. You wake up in where you are right now. So that's another thing I say over and over and over, because the mind just can't hear this often, is like, you wake up right where you are. You wake up right how you are. It's that simple. That's why this pointing of stopping can be so powerful. If it hits at the right time in the right place for the right person, stop. Don't try to be something. Don't try to stop being something. Don't try to be better. Don't try to understand. Don't try to let go. Stop. What happens when you stop? Don't move your mind. Don't grab a thought. Don't move. You are the environment. That's why you react seamlessly with it. You don't need to maintain anything. Stop. Just stop.